Have you ever given your heart and soul to someone only to be treated like an afterthought? That moment when you realize your kindness has been mistaken for weakness can change everything. My name is Eleanor Reynolds, and after 27 years of being the perfect mother and grandmother, I discovered that the more you give to those who don't appreciate you, the more they'll take until there's nothing left. But sometimes life offers you a second chance to reclaim your worth. And my chance came in the form of a gold-embossed invitation that would change everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The phone's persistent ringing pulled me from my concentration. I was carefully placing the last rhinestone on the handmade birthday card for my grandson Liam's 8th birthday party tomorrow. My dining table was covered with craft supplies, a small luxury I allowed myself after spending most of my modest pension on helping my daughter Caroline with her mortgage last month. "Mom, are you there? I need a favor." Caroline's voice had that particular tone, sweet but rushed, that I had learned meant she wanted something. "Of course, dear. Is everything all right?" I sat up straighter, my fingers still sticky with glue. "Change of plans for tomorrow. Jason's parents are coming for Liam's party, and they've decided to take him skiing for the week after. They're leaving right from the party." My heart sank. I had taken 3 buses to find the special astronomy kit Liam had been hinting about for months. Oh, so the party's still on? Just a shorter celebration? Well, Jason's mom wants to host it at their country club instead. She's already made arrangements. It makes more sense with them leaving right after. The card in my hand suddenly felt childish and inadequate. "I see. What time should I arrive at the club?" The silence that followed told me everything before Caroline's words confirmed it. "That's the thing, Mom. The club has strict guest policies, and Jason's parents could only secure a limited number of spots, with his work colleagues and their children attending. I'm not invited to my own grandson's birthday party?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Mom, don't make this difficult. You'll see him when they get back. And anyway, that's not why I called." She rushed on without waiting for my response. "We need you to watch the house while they're gone. The security system's acting up and with the recent break-ins in the neighborhood." I closed my eyes, picturing the 2-story colonial in Oak Ridge Heights that I had contributed $30,000 of my retirement savings toward as a down payment gift 5 years ago. The house I was apparently not good enough to visit for a birthday celebration, but was trusted to protect. "Of course," I agreed automatically, as I had to countless requests over the years. "Perfect. The code is the same. Oh, and could you water the plants?" The ficus in the sunroom needs special attention. Jason paid a fortune for it. More valuable than a grandmother's presents, apparently. After hanging up, I stared at the birthday card. To my special stargazer, sparkled with hand-placed rhinestones forming the constellation Orion, Liam's favorite. Next to it sat the carefully wrapped telescope with books about the night sky. I had spent 3 months setting aside a little from each pension check to afford it. This wasn't the first time I'd been sidelined. It was simply the most recent reminder of my place in their lives. Convenient when needed, invisible when not. But at 62, I had become so accustomed to this treatment that I barely felt the sting anymore. Or so I told myself. My journey to this moment began 27 years ago when I discovered I was pregnant with Caroline. Her father, Martin, my college sweetheart, had grand plans for our future. Medical school for him, a promising journalism career for me. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but I was overjoyed. Martin was not. "I can't do this right now, Ellie," he had said, pacing our small apartment. "Med school starts in 2 months. We agreed to wait until I was established." "Plans change," I had responded, cradling my still flat stomach. "We'll make it work." But Martin couldn't envision a life derailed from its carefully plotted course. Within a week, he was gone, leaving nothing but a check for $1,000 and a note saying he needed to focus on his future. I never cashed the check. Instead, I framed it alongside my rejected application to the investigative journalism fellowship I'd been pursuing, 2 reminders of the path not taken. The framed check still sits on my bedside table, a strange souvenir of what my life could have been. I didn't return to my hometown of Pine Ridge in shame as my mother feared I would. Instead, I stayed in Boston, took on extra freelance editing, jobs, and finished my degree while carrying Caroline. Sleep became a luxury. Meals were often whatever I could afford that week, usually rice with different seasonings to create the illusion of variety. But I completed my English degree, 1 night class at a time, with a newborn strapped to my chest. My first job after graduation was as a copy editor at a small publishing house, not the prestigious newspaper position I had dreamed of, but it offered steady income and health insurance for Caroline. The office allowed me to bring her on days when childcare fell through, setting up a small play area beside my desk. I would edit manuscripts with one hand and rock her carrier with the other. As Caroline grew, so did my determination to give her everything I hadn't had: stability, opportunities, the confidence that comes from knowing you are unconditionally supported. I took on additional freelance work, editing academic papers late into the night after Caroline was asleep. Every extra dollar went toward dance lessons, summer camps, school trips, experiences I believed would shape her into a confident, well-rounded person. When Caroline was 7, I was offered a promotion to senior editor, a position that would finally provide financial breathing room but required longer hours and occasional travel. I declined, opting instead for a lateral move to a role with flexible scheduling that allowed me to never miss a school performance or parent-teacher conference. My mother, during her infrequent calls from Florida, would sigh heavily at my choices. "You're martyring yourself for that child, Eleanor. What about your needs? Your future?" But I didn't see it as martyrdom. Caroline was my world, my purpose, my greatest joy. When she laughed, my small apartment filled with a light that no career advancement could provide. When she wrapped her arms around me and called me her best mommy, I felt a fulfillment that no promotion could match. Through elementary school, our bond was unshakable. Caroline would race home, bursting to tell me about her day. We had Friday night traditions, popcorn and a movie, both of us in matching pajamas I had saved for months to buy. I helped with science projects, quizzed her on spelling words, and stayed up researching how to explain complicated math concepts when she struggled. Middle school brought the first subtle shifts. Caroline began comparing our life to her friends. Why couldn't we live in Westbrook like Melissa's family? Why didn't we have a summer home like the Hendersons? Why did she have to wear hand-sewn Halloween costumes when everyone else had store-bought ones? Each question pierced me, but I smiled through it, explaining our circumstances as best I could without burdening her with adult worries. I took on additional work, weekend inventory at a local bookstore, to afford the brand name jeans and backpack that suddenly seemed crucial to her happiness. High school accelerated the change. Caroline joined the field hockey team, where she befriended girls from Oak Ridge Heights, the affluent part of town with sprawling homes and manicured lawns. Suddenly, our cozy apartment with its mismatched furniture and walls covered in Caroline's artwork became embarrassing. I was no longer invited to school events unless absolutely necessary, and when I did attend, Caroline would keep a careful distance. "Mom, you don't have to cheer so loudly," she would whisper, cheeks flushed with embarrassment rather than pride. I told myself it was normal teenage behavior, a phase, nothing more. I focused on the future, on college applications and scholarships. I had been saving since her birth, tucking away money in a 529 plan that required creative budgeting and many sacrifices. No vacations, no new clothes, no car newer than 15 years old. But Caroline would have opportunities I never did. The acceptance letter from Westmont University, a prestigious private college known for its business program, arrived on a rainy Tuesday. Caroline screamed with joy, jumping around our small living room. I cried too, both in happiness and private. Terror at the remaining costs even after scholarships and my savings. But I kept my smile firmly in place. "We did it, honey." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "I'm so proud of you." "I can't believe it," she twirled, clutching the letter. "Melissa and Taylor got in too. We're going to room together." That night, after Caroline fell asleep still clutching her acceptance letter, I applied for a second mortgage on our apartment and began researching night security positions. The publishing house had been downsizing, and my position felt precarious. I needed backup plans to ensure Caroline's education wouldn't be interrupted. College marked another evolution in our relationship. During her freshman year, calls home were frequent, often tearful, filled with homesickness and struggles adjusting to coursework. I sent care packages I couldn't afford, her favorite snacks, fuzzy socks, a framed photo of us from her high school graduation. I drove the 3 hours to campus whenever she needed me, sitting in her dorm room helping with laundry or editing papers. By sophomore year, the calls decreased. Caroline joined a sorority, Delta Sigma something, filled with girls whose parents were executives, doctors, lawyers. My daughter, who had once cherished our Friday movie nights, now spent weekends at Martha's Vineyard with her new friends, families. When I visited campus, she would meet me for quick lunches off campus, checking her watch throughout our conversations. It was during her junior year that she met Jason Whitaker III, son of a banking executive and heir to a family with old money and older connections. Jason was handsome, ambitious, and from a world I had never entered. When Caroline brought him home during spring break, I spent a week preparing, scrubbing the apartment, preparing elaborate meals from borrowed cookbooks, even purchasing a new outfit on credit. Jason was polite but distant, his eyes constantly surveying our modest home with barely concealed judgment. He answered my questions about his studies and future plans with rehearsed responses that revealed nothing of substance. When Caroline showed him her childhood bedroom, I overheard him whisper, "You grew up here? Like the whole time?" The summer before Caroline's senior year, she announced she was staying at the Whitakers' summer home in Newport instead of coming home. "It's important for my future, Mom. Jason's father has connections to all the top marketing firms. This could set up my entire career." I swallowed my disappointment and said what I always said. "Of course, honey. I understand." In my empty apartment, I continued working my 3 jobs, the publishing house during days, remote data entry in the evenings, and weekend shifts at the bookstore. The second mortgage payment arrived monthly, a reminder of sacrifices that felt increasingly one-sided. Caroline and Jason became engaged during their senior year, with a ring that cost more than my annual salary. The Whitakers hosted an elaborate engagement party at their country club. I received an invitation 3 days before the event, clearly an afterthought. I spent $340 I couldn't spare on a dress that wouldn't embarrass Caroline, only to be seated at a table far from the main celebration with distant relatives no one else wanted to entertain. Caroline introduced me to Jason's parents with a strange, apologetic smile. "This is my mom. She works in publishing," she said, neglecting to mention I was a senior editor who had guided multiple books to bestseller status despite my limited opportunities for advancement. Mrs. Whitaker, Elaine, looked at me as one might regard an unusual insect. "How interesting. And Caroline's father? Will he be joining us?" "It's just been Mom and me," Caroline interjected before I could respond. Dad wasn't in the picture. "I raised Caroline on my own," I added, trying to reclaim some dignity. "I'm very proud of the woman she's become." "Indeed," Elaine responded with a tight smile. Remarkable what single mothers can accomplish these days. The resilience of the lower classes is truly inspiring. Carolyn laughed nervously, rather than defending me. That night, I cried myself to sleep for the first time since Martin had left. The wedding planning became an exercise in subtle humiliation. The Whitakers insisted on paying for everything. "It's tradition," Elaine said, though her tone conveyed it was more about control than generosity. My offers to contribute were politely but firmly rejected. "Mom, they want to do this. It's easier not to fight it," Caroline explained when I expressed feeling sidelined. I was permitted to attend dress fittings but not to offer opinions. My suggestion of including a reading that had special meaning from Caroline's childhood was dismissed as not quite appropriate for the venue. Even my role in the ceremony was diminished. I would not walk her down the aisle as we had always planned. Instead, Jason's father would do the honors, because photos would look more balanced that way. The wedding was a spectacle of wealth. 600 guests at the Whitaker estate, ice sculptures, a 10-piece orchestra, and flowers flown in from Holland. I wore the one acceptable dress I owned, a navy blue sheath I had splurged on for a publishing award ceremony years earlier. During the reception, I overheard two of Jason's aunts discussing me near the ladies' room. "That's the mother? She looks so ordinary." Apparently, she's some sort of secretary or assistant. Can you imagine? No wonder Caroline is so eager to establish herself properly. I slipped away before they could see me, found a quiet corner of the garden, and allowed myself 5 minutes of pure grief for the relationship I had thought Caroline and I shared. Then I dried my eyes, fixed my makeup, and returned to the celebration with the smile I had perfected over decades of putting my daughter's needs before my own pain. After the wedding, Caroline and Jason purchased their home in Oak Ridge Heights, the colonial that would later require my financial assistance. When they asked for help with the down payment, I liquidated my modest retirement account without hesitation. What was my future compared to their beginning? "You're an angel, Mom," Caroline had said when I handed her the check. "We'll pay you back someday, I promise." We both knew it was a promise that would never be fulfilled. The money disappeared into their new life without further mention. When Caroline announced her pregnancy a year later, I felt a surge of hope. Perhaps a grandchild would bring us closer again. Perhaps in becoming a mother herself, Caroline would recognize the depth of what we had shared. Liam Alexander Whitaker was born on a crisp autumn morning. I took unpaid leave from work to be present, waiting anxiously in the private hospital suite the Whitakers had arranged. After 15 hours of labor, I was permitted a brief visit. 10 minutes to meet my grandson before being asked to leave so the immediate family could bond. Immediate family. The phrase echoed in my mind as I drove home alone. When had I become less than immediate to my only child? In the early weeks, Caroline called frequently, overwhelmed by the realities of new motherhood despite the night nurse the Whitakers had hired. I would drive over immediately, regardless of the hour, to rock Liam while Caroline slept, or simply sat in stunned exhaustion. "I had no idea it would be this hard," she confessed during one 3 a.m. feeding. "How did you do this alone?" For a moment, my heart swelled with recognition, finally an acknowledgement of what our journey had been. But the moment passed without further reflection from Caroline, and by morning, the vulnerability was replaced with her new normal efficiency. As Liam grew, I treasured every moment I was allowed with him. Unlike his mother at that age, he was quiet and observant, with serious eyes that studied everything. I would read to him for hours, delighting in his small gasps at picture book revelations. I taught him nursery rhymes and silly songs that made him giggle uncontrollably. But as had happened with Caroline, my time with Liam gradually became more structured, more limited. Spontaneous visits were discouraged. "We're trying to establish a routine," Caroline would explain when turning me away. "The parenting books say consistency is key." I was permitted scheduled visits, Tuesday afternoons, occasional Sunday brunches, when the Whitakers' social calendar allowed. I was the emergency contact for the preschool, but rarely the first choice for actual emergencies. When Liam developed a high fever during a weekend when Caroline and Jason were at a charity gala, it was Elaine who was called to take him to the doctor, not me. Still, I cherished what I was given. Liam and I developed our own special bond over his growing interest in astronomy. During my Tuesday visits, we would read books about planets and stars. I saved for months to buy him a beginner's telescope for his 5th birthday, teaching him to find the moon and identify Mars. Grandma Ellie knows everything about the sky, he once told Caroline with such conviction that she looked at me in surprise, as if seeing me anew. Mom was always into that science stuff, she said dismissively. But Liam, remember you have sailing lessons on Saturday. The stars will still be there later. The stars, unlike me, were a constant presence deemed worthy of postponement. Last month marked a turning point I hadn't anticipated. After 22 years at the publishing house, I was called into a meeting with new management. The company had been acquired by a larger corporation, and restructuring was inevitable. Despite my senior position and institutional knowledge, I was offered early retirement with a modest severance package. We're moving toward a more digital-focused model with younger staff who natively understand social media integration, the HR representative explained, avoiding eye contact. At 62, I was suddenly unemployed, with a severance that would cover expenses for perhaps 6 months if I was extremely careful. My apartment, while modest, was in an area that had gentrified around me, making the rent nearly unsustainable on my reduced income. When I called Caroline to share this development, her response was characteristically self-focused. "Oh, that's too bad. But maybe it's for the best. Now you can help more with Liam. Actually, that works out perfectly because we've been thinking about letting the nanny go. She's asking for health insurance, can you believe it? Not, are you okay financially? Not, do you need help finding another position? Just immediately calculating how my misfortune could benefit her budget. I'll need to find another job, Caroline. My savings won't last long. Mom, be realistic. Who's going to hire someone your age? Besides, you always said nothing was more important than family. This is your chance to really be there for Liam." The conversation ended with no resolution, but the expectation was clear. I should be grateful for the opportunity to provide free childcare while struggling to maintain my own independence. That night, as I updated my resume and searched online job boards, an email notification appeared from a name I hadn't seen in decades. Diana Foster. Diana and I had been inseparable throughout college. Brilliant, fearless, determined to become investigative journalists exposing corruption and changing the world. While I had set aside those dreams for motherhood, Diana had pursued them relentlessly, building an impressive career that had recently culminated in her appointment as editor-in-chief of the Metropolitan, one of the country's most respected news magazines. "Ellie," her email began, "I've been thinking about you. Life takes us on strange journeys, doesn't it? Mine has finally brought me back to Boston, and I find myself hoping to reconnect with the friend who understood me better than anyone. The Metropolitan is hosting its annual New Year's Eve gala, a ridiculous affair with celebrities and power players that somehow became the social event of the season. I have an extra VIP ticket with your name on it. Say yes. After all these years. Let's begin a new year together, reminiscing about the past and perhaps plotting a shared future. My company is expanding its book review division, and I remember how brilliantly you analyzed literature. Opportunity knocks, old friend. Will you answer?" I stared at the screen, heart racing. The Metropolitan's New Year's Gala was legendary, covered by society pages, attended by cultural icons and political figures. And Diana, my Diana from all those years ago, was offering not just an invitation, but a potential professional lifeline. For the first time in decades, I felt a flutter of possibility for myself, not as Caroline's mother or Liam's grandmother, but as Eleanor Reynolds, the woman who once had dreams of her own. I read the email 3 times before allowing myself to reply with a simple, "Yes, I would be honored." Diana's response came within minutes. "Wonderful. I've booked you a room at the Four Seasons for New Year's Eve. No arguments. A car will collect you at 7. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. We have much to discuss about your future." My future. 2 words I had stopped associating with myself long ago. In the following days, I experienced an unfamiliar sense of anticipation. I withdrew a small amount from my dwindling savings to purchase a dress, a deep emerald gown that brought out the green in my eyes and skimmed over my figure with unexpected elegance. I scheduled an appointment at a salon for my first professional haircut in years, choosing a sophisticated shoulder-length style that the stylist assured me took years off. I didn't tell Caroline about the invitation or my plans. Our conversations had fallen into predictable patterns, her demands, my acquiescence, and I wasn't ready to disrupt that dynamic until I understood what opportunities might actually materialize from reconnecting with Diana. And that's how I found myself here, at my dining table, completing Liam's birthday card the day before everything would change. I didn't know then that Caroline's call about the party was just the precursor to a much larger request, one that would force me to choose between maintaining the unbalanced relationship we had established or finally reclaiming my own worth. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. When I opened it, I found a package wrapped in silver paper with a card bearing the Metropolitan's embossed logo. Inside was a vintage brooch, a small silver star with a tiny diamond at its center. Diana's note read, "To remind you of the bright future ahead. This belonged to my mentor when I first started at the magazine. She gave it to me when I became editor, saying true stars recognize each other's light. I'm passing it to you now. Wear it tomorrow night as we begin our next chapter." I pinned the brooch to my robe, its weight against my chest both unfamiliar and somehow right. Tomorrow would bring Liam's birthday party, the celebration I had been excluded from, and then New Year's Eve, with its unexpected promise of renewal. Standing in my small living room, surrounded by the modest life I had built while giving the best of myself away, I made a quiet promise. Whatever happened next, I would no longer be an afterthought in my own story. The woman who had sacrificed everything for others was finally ready to invest in herself. I arrived at the Whitakers Country Club precisely at noon, parking my aging Corolla at the far end of the lot where it wouldn't offend the sea of luxury vehicles. Though I wasn't invited to the party, I still had Liam's gifts to deliver. The security guard at the entrance examined me with thinly veiled suspicion. "I'm just dropping something off for my grandson," I explained, holding up the carefully wrapped telescope and books. He made a call, and minutes later, Caroline appeared in the doorway. Her carefully highlighted hair was swept into an elegant updo, her cream cashmere sweater probably costing more than my monthly rent. Her expression shifted rapidly from annoyance to forced politeness when she noticed the guard watching. "Mom, you didn't need to come all this way." She stepped outside, rather than inviting me in, keeping her voice low. "I told you we'd see you when they get back from the ski trip." "I know. I just wanted to drop off Liam's gift." I held out the packages. "The telescope needs to be assembled. There are instructions inside, but if Jason has trouble, I can help. When they return." Caroline took the gifts with a quick glance toward the entrance. "Thanks. I'll make sure he knows it's from you." She hesitated, then added, "You really didn't need to spend so much. Jason's parents already got him one of those computerized models that automatically finds constellations." Of course they had. My gift, carefully researched to match Liam's age and interests, saved for over months, was redundant in the face of the Whitakers' casual extravagance. "Well, maybe he can keep this one at my place for when he visits." I tried to keep my voice light, though we both knew his visits had become increasingly rare. Caroline shifted uncomfortably. "Listen, Mom. About the house sitting. We need you to come over tonight instead of tomorrow. The cleaning service canceled, and the place needs to be ready before Jason's parents arrive in the morning to pick everyone up." "Tonight? But Caroline, it's New Year's Eve." She rolled her eyes. "So? It's not like you have plans." The dismissal stung, but something stopped me from mentioning Diana's invitation. Some small, protective part of me wanted to keep this opportunity safe from Caroline's inevitable diminishment. "Actually, I do have plans tonight." Caroline's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. "You do? What plans?" "I'm meeting an old friend." I kept my response deliberately vague. "What friend?" "Nobody called when I was over last." "Weak." Her tone suggested that any real friend would have called during her brief, distracted visit, where she'd spent most of the time on her phone. "Diana Foster, from college." Recognition flickered in Caroline's eyes. "The one in those old photos? I thought she lived in New York or something." "She's in Boston now. She's invited me to an event." Caroline studied me with newfound interest. "What kind of event?" I hesitated, then decided on partial honesty. "A New Year's Eve gathering." "Like a senior center thing?" The relief in her voice was palpable. If my plans were suitably unimportant, they could still be sacrificed. "No, it's at the Metropolitan. Diana is the editor-in-chief now." Caroline's expression shifted again, calculation replacing dismissal. "The Metropolitan? The magazine?" Her voice took on a strange, eager quality. "That's quite a connection. Mom. You never mentioned you were still in touch with someone so positioned." I hadn't been, but that distinction seemed unnecessary. "We recently reconnected." "Is it a big event? Will there be people from the publishing industry there?" The wheels were visibly turning behind Caroline's eyes. "I believe so. It's their annual gala." Something sharp and almost hungry flashed across her face. "The New Year's gala at the Metropolitan? That's a major event. There'll be celebrities, executives." She trailed off, then touched my arm with sudden warmth. "You should have told me sooner. This could be an amazing opportunity." "For whom?" I asked quietly. She ignored my question. "Jason's firm has been trying to connect with the Metropolitan's parent company for months. They handle some major investment portfolios." Her fingers tightened on my arm. "Mom, listen, I have the perfect solution. Bring the cleaning supplies to our house tonight, take care of the essentials, and then you can still make your party. The house will be secure with you there afterward." "The gala starts at 8, Carolyn. It would be impossible to clean your entire house and make it in time." I gently removed her hand from my arm. "Well, what about tomorrow then? You could come early before they pick up Liam. Jason's parents would love to meet your friend, especially if she has connections." The naked opportunism in her tone made my stomach tighten. "I won't be available tomorrow either. Diana has arranged a brunch to introduce me to some colleagues." This was a lie, but a necessary one. "I've already committed." Caroline's warmth vanished like morning dew in August. "So, let me get this straight. After everything we've done for you, you're refusing to help us because of some last-minute party invitation?" "Everything you've done for me?" The words escaped before I could stop them. "Yes. Do you think it's easy making sure you're included in family events? Driving across town to check on you? Letting you be part of Liam's life even though you can? Barely afford proper gifts for him?" Her voice rose, drawing the attention of the security guard. In that moment, something crystallized inside me, a clarity I had been avoiding for years. Caroline genuinely believed she was doing me favors by allowing me into my grandson's life, by acknowledging my existence at all. My sacrifices had become her entitlements. My love had become her leverage. I see. My voice was steadier than I expected. Then perhaps we should reassess our arrangement. Caroline blinked, clearly not anticipating resistance. What's that supposed to mean? It means I won't be available to clean your house or watch it while you're away. You'll need to make other arrangements. Her face flushed with anger. You can't be serious. This is important for Jason's career. His parents are expecting everything to be perfect for Liam's trip. I understand it's important, but so are my plans. Your plans, she scoffed. One random invitation, and suddenly you're too good for family obligations? This is ridiculous, Mom. You're being selfish. That word, selfish, after decades of putting her needs before my own, finally broke something loose inside me. No, Caroline. Selfish is expecting your mother to clean your house on New Year's Eve. Selfish is excluding me from my grandson's birthday, but expecting me to deliver gifts anyway. Selfish is treating my time and energy as resources you're entitled to without gratitude or reciprocity. Her mouth opened in shock. I can't believe you're saying this to me. After everything. Please stop saying after everything, I interrupted quietly. We both know who has given everything in this relationship. Caroline's eyes narrowed. If that's how you feel, maybe you should go to your fancy party and forget about us altogether. That's not what I want, and you know it. I sighed, suddenly tired of this familiar emotional terrain. I want a relationship based on mutual respect, not constant obligation. Whatever. Caroline stepped back toward the door. I have to get back to Liam's party. The one you're apparently too important to attend now. I'll tell everyone you weren't feeling well. She paused, then added with deliberate cruelty, not that anyone was really expecting you anyway. The door closed firmly behind her, leaving me standing alone in the December cold, still wearing the visitor badge the security guard had reluctantly provided. I stood there longer than I should have, processing what had just happened. For the first time in our adult relationship, I had prioritized my needs over Caroline's demands, and the world hadn't ended. It felt terrifying and exhilarating all at once. During the drive home, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Caroline, each more manipulative than the last. Jason's mother is very disappointed. She was hoping to discuss your friend's connections. Liam asked where you were. I had to explain that work was more important to you than his birthday. If you change your mind about helping us, the key is under the mat. Otherwise, don't worry about it. We'll manage without your help as usual. Each message was designed to trigger the guilt and obligation that had governed our relationship for decades. But something had shifted inside me, a tectonic realignment that couldn't be reversed. I silenced my phone and focused on preparing for the evening ahead. At home, I laid the emerald dress carefully across my bed, still wrapped in tissue paper from the boutique. The price tag, $340, had required dipping into next month's grocery budget, but holding it against me in the store mirror had awakened something I'd long forgotten, the simple joy of feeling beautiful. As I prepared for the evening, another text from Caroline arrived. Fine. If you insist on going to this party instead of helping family, at least introduce Jason to your editor friend. His firm would be very appreciative of the connection. The naked transactionalism of her approach no longer surprised me. I left the message unanswered and continued getting ready. The transformation in my mirror was subtle but profound. The new haircut framed my face in a way that emphasized my cheekbones rather than the slight softening beneath my jaw. The dress color brought warmth to my complexion, and the silver star brooch from Diana added an elegant touch. I applied makeup, with care, not to disguise my age, but to celebrate the woman who had earned every line on her face. At precisely 7, my doorbell rang. Outside waited a sleek black car, the driver professionally courteous as he opened the door. Diana had arranged everything with the thoughtfulness I remembered from our college days. As the car navigated through Boston's streets, now festive with New Year's Eve revelry, my phone lit up with a call from Caroline. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "Hello? Mom?" Caroline's voice had shifted to the honeyed tone she used when trying to charm service workers. "I've been thinking about our conversation earlier. I may have overreacted." "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "The thing is, we really do need help with the house, and I know you'd want to support Jason's career opportunities, so I've come up with the perfect compromise." I waited, already suspecting what was coming. "You could attend your party for an hour or two, network with your friend, introduce Jason to any useful contacts, and then leave early to take care of the house. That way, everyone wins." The sheer audacity of her proposal, that I should use Diana's generous invitation as a networking opportunity for Jason, then cut my evening short to clean their house, would have been comical if it weren't so painfully revealing. "That won't be possible, Caroline. Tonight is important to me, and I'll be attending the entire event." "Mom, be reasonable. It's just a party. There will be other parties." Not for me, I thought. Not invitations that carried the potential to reclaim parts of myself I'd surrendered decades ago. "My decision is final. I suggest you contact a cleaning service. They have emergency rates for holidays." Caroline's pleasant facade cracked. "Those cost a fortune. This is ridiculous. It's New Year's Eve, not a coronation. I don't understand why you're being so difficult." "I'm not being difficult. I'm being clear about my boundaries. Those are different things." "Boundaries?" She made the word sound foreign and slightly offensive. "Since when do mothers have boundaries with their children?" "Since always, Caroline. I just haven't enforced mine before." The silence that followed felt weighted with decades of unspoken expectations. "Fine," she finally said, her voice cold. "Enjoy your party. But don't expect us to rearrange our lives when you suddenly decide you need something from us." The irony was so profound I almost laughed. "Happy New Year, Caroline. Give Liam my love." I ended the call as the car pulled up to the Metropolitan building, its facade illuminated with thousands of tiny white lights for the occasion. The sidewalk was lined with photographers capturing the arrivals of celebrities and dignitaries. I felt a moment of anxiety. I didn't belong in this glittering world, but then straightened my shoulders. Neither did the frightened young mother, who had raised Caroline alone, yet she had persevered. I could do this too. The driver opened my door and I stepped out, immediately overwhelmed by the flashing cameras and elegant crowd. But then I saw her, Diana, standing at the top of the steps, exactly as I remembered and completely transformed at once. Her hair, once a wild mane of dark curls, was now a stylish silver bob. Her posture radiated the confidence of someone who had claimed her place in the world unapologetically. "Eleanor Reynolds," she called, descending the steps with arms outstretched. Still the most beautiful mind I've ever known. We embraced like the decades apart had been merely days, falling instantly into the comfortable rhythm of old friendship. "You look magnificent," Diana said, holding me at arm's length to examine my appearance. "That color was made for you." "I feel somewhat out of place," I admitted as we entered the grand lobby, now transformed into a sparkling winter wonderland. "Nonsense. You belong exactly where you choose to be, Ellie. That was always your superpower, authenticity in any situation." She linked her arm through mine. "Now, there are about 100 people I want you to meet, but first, let's get champagne. We're celebrating tonight." "Celebrating what?" I asked, accepting a flute from a passing server. Diana's eyes sparkled, with mischief and purpose. "New beginnings, old friend. Yours, specifically." As she guided me through the crowd, introducing me to authors, publishers, and media executives with casual familiarity, I glimpsed an alternate version of my life. The path not taken, the career that might have been mine had different choices been made. But rather than regret, I felt a curious sense of appreciation for both roads, the one I had traveled, with its profound joys and sorrows of motherhood, and this glittering parallel universe that Diana had navigated with such success. Each had exacted its prices and offered its unique rewards. Eleanor was always the better writer between us, Diana was saying to a distinguished-looking man she'd introduced as the publisher of a prestigious literary imprint. Her analysis of narrative structure was revolutionary even back in college. "You're too kind," I demurred. "Diana was fearless. I always admired that about her." "And I admired your depth," she countered. "Still do, which is why—" She glanced at her watch. "It's time for the surprise." "Surprise? Diana, you've done more than enough already." "Hardly. Come with me." She led me to a quiet corner where a small table had been set up with a laptop and what appeared to be contracts. "What's this?" I asked, confused. "Your future, if you want it." Diana's expression turned serious. "Ellie, when I said the Metropolitan was expanding its book review division, that wasn't idle conversation. We're launching a new imprint focused on literary fiction and memoir. I need an executive editor with impeccable taste and a profound understanding of narrative architecture." I stared at her, uncomprehending. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a directorship, full. Benefits, significant creative control, and a salary that might surprise you." She slid a folder toward me. "The formal offer is in here, but the short version is $120,000 annually plus performance bonuses. We'd need you to start in February." The amount, nearly triple what I had been making at my previous position, made me physically sit down in the nearest chair. "Diana, I don't know what to say. It's incredibly generous, but are you sure? I've been out of the mainstream publishing world for decades. My experience is limited to a small regional house. Where you cultivated 3 bestsellers and built an impressive backlist of critically acclaimed works despite limited resources," Diana countered. "I've done my research, Ellie. I know exactly what you're capable of." "But what about my age?" The other company said. "That other company was staffed by short-sighted fools. I'm interested in wisdom, experience, and proven judgment, all of which you have in abundance." Diana sat across from me, her gaze direct and unwavering. "The publishing world doesn't need more 20-something social media experts. It needs editors who understand the architecture of great literature and the human experiences it reflects." Tears threatened at the edges of my vision. To be seen, truly seen, for my professional value after years of being defined solely by my relationship to others felt overwhelming. "I don't know what to say," I repeated, my voice thick with emotion. "Say you'll consider it. The formal interview is just a formality. The position is yours if you want it. We can work out relocation details later. The Metropolitan maintains corporate apartments for executives transitioning to the area." Relocation? That pulled me up short. "The position is in New York?" Diana nodded. "Our headquarters are there, yes. Would that be a problem?" My immediate thought was of Liam, of being further from him than I already felt. But then came the realization that my physical proximity had done little to secure my place in his life. Caroline and the Whitakers controlled those boundaries regardless of geography. "I would need to think about it," I said carefully. "Of course. No rush. Well, some rush. I'd need your answer by mid-January." Diana's smile was understanding. "Tonight is for celebration, not decisions. Read the offer later, ask questions, take time to process. But know this, I believe in you, Eleanor. I always have." As we rejoined the gala, something had shifted in my internal landscape. The possibility of a new chapter, one defined by professional recognition and financial security, lay before me like an open book. For the first time in decades, I allowed myself to imagine a life structured around my own ambitions and needs, not just the service of others. The evening unfolded in a kaleidoscope of introductions, conversations about literature and publishing trends, and quiet moments catching up with Diana on the years between. I met Pulitzer Prize winners who discussed character development with the same passion I felt, editors who asked my opinions on manuscript trends, and industry veterans who treated me as a peer rather than an outsider. At 11, as the celebration built toward midnight, my phone vibrated with another call from Caroline. I excused myself to a quiet alcove and answered. "Is everything all right?" I asked, genuine concern overriding our earlier tension. "No, everything is not all right." Caroline's voice was tight with anger. "The cleaning service wants $800 for an emergency New Year's Eve booking. This is ridiculous. You need to come help us." The demand, not request, felt different now, filtered through the lens of the evening's revelations and possibilities. "I'm sorry, but that's not possible. I'm still at the gala." "Still? It's been hours. How long does it take to make a few introductions?" I closed my eyes briefly, summoning patience. "Caroline, I'm not here to network for Jason. I'm here as Diana's guest, considering a job offer." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. "A job offer?" Her voice had changed, caution replacing anger. "What kind of job?" "Executive editor for a new imprint at the Metropolitan, in New York." Another longer silence. "New York? You can't be serious. What about your apartment here? What about Liam?" "I haven't accepted yet. I'm considering my options." "Mom, be realistic." The dismissive tone had returned. "You're 62. People don't just start over at your age. And what about your responsibilities here?" "My responsibilities. Not my relationships or connections. My utility functions. My age gives me experience, Caroline. Diana values that. As for my responsibilities..." I paused, considering my words carefully. "I will always love you and Liam. That won't change regardless of geography. But I need to consider what's best for my future." "Your future?" She sounded genuinely bewildered, as if the concept of me having a future separate from supporting her life was incomprehensible. "Mom, this is crazy. You belong here, close to family." "Do I?" I asked softly. "Because earlier today you made it quite clear that my presence was optional at best and an inconvenience at worst." "That's not fair. You know how stressful..." "These events are with Jason's parents. I wasn't myself. You were exactly yourself, Caroline, and that's something we both need to acknowledge." In the background, I could hear Jason's voice asking impatiently who she was talking to. Caroline covered the phone briefly, then returned. "Look, we can discuss this later. Right now, we need help with the house. This is important." "So, is this evening to me?" The firmness in my voice surprised us both. "I'm sorry, but I won't. Be leaving early. You'll need to find another solution." "Fine." Her voice was cold again. "Enjoy your pretend job interview and fancy party. I hope it's worth destroying your relationship with your only family." The call ended abruptly, leaving me standing in the alcove, Diana's job offer in one hand and my phone in the other, a physical manifestation of the choice before me. Diana appeared at my side, concern evident in her expression. "Everything all right?" I took a deep breath, tucking my phone away. Just family expectations colliding with personal boundaries, nothing new. She nodded with the understanding of someone who had navigated her own complex family dynamics. The eternal struggle. "Come on, they're about to serve the midnight champagne. Whatever happens tomorrow, tonight we celebrate new possibilities." As we rejoined the festivities, I felt a strange lightness despite Caroline's harsh words. For decades, I had measured my worth by how completely I could meet others' needs, how invisibly I could subsume my own desires. Tonight, standing among peers who valued my mind and experience, wearing a dress chosen solely because it made me feel beautiful. I remembered something essential that had been lost along the way. I was more than Caroline's mother or Liam's grandmother. I was Eleanor Reynolds, a woman with ambitions, talents, and the right to claim her own path, even at 62. When the countdown to midnight began, Diana handed me a fresh glass of champagne and smiled with the conspiratorial warmth of our college days. "To new beginnings," she said as the crowd chanted down from 10. "To remembering who we were always meant to be," I answered. As the clock struck midnight and the room erupted in celebration, I lifted my glass and made a silent promise to myself. Whatever happened with Diana's offer, whether I moved to New York or remained in Boston, I would no longer be an afterthought in my own life story. The woman who had sacrificed everything for others was finally ready to invest in herself. And that decision, that fundamental reorientation toward my own worth, felt like the truest new beginning of all. The morning after the gala, I awoke. In the Four Seasons hotel room Diana had arranged, momentarily disoriented by the plush surroundings. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a view of Boston I rarely experienced. The city from above, small figures moving through snow-dusted streets, the harbor glittering in the distance. My phone showed 7 missed, calls from Caroline, and a dozen increasingly irate text messages. The final one, sent at 3:17 a.m., read, "Had to pay $950 for emergency cleaning service. Will be deducting from what we gave you for Christmas. Hope your party was worth it." What they had given me for Christmas was a $50 gift card to a chain restaurant and a generic scarf still in the department store gift box. The transparent attempt to inflate their generosity while punishing my independence might have worked a day earlier. Today, it simply clarified the dynamics I had been too close to fully see. Room service arrived with the breakfast Diana had prearranged: fresh fruit, croissants, and coffee in a silver pot. Such simple luxuries, yet they felt revolutionary. When was the last time someone had arranged for my comfort without expecting something in return? At 10, Diana called. "Sleep well? I hope the room was comfortable." It was lovely. All of it was lovely. "Diana, I don't know how to thank you." "No thanks necessary. Have you had a chance to look over the offer?" I glanced at the folder, on the nightstand. Not thoroughly, but the top-line details are extraordinary. They reflect your value, Ellie. Nothing more, nothing less. Her voice shifted from warm to businesslike. "The car will take you home whenever you're ready. I've arranged for a courier to deliver the formal paperwork next week. Take your time reviewing everything, but—" She paused. "I meant what?" I said. "You'd be perfect for this role." "I'll consider it seriously," I promised. "Good. Now, one more thing. Are you free for dinner next Saturday? I'd like you to meet the creative team. Just informally, no pressure." The invitation was another step toward making this surreal opportunity concrete. I'd love that. After hanging up, I opened the employment offer and read through it properly. Beyond the substantial salary, there were health benefits more comprehensive than any I'd had before. A retirement package with generous matching, relocation assistance, and even a housing allowance for the first 6 months. The job description outlined responsibilities that matched my strengths: cultivating new authors, shaping manuscripts, developing a cohesive vision for the imprint. It was, in every way, the career I might have had if life had taken different turns. Now it was being offered to me as a beginning rather than an ending, a profound reframing of what my 60s could be. As the car took me home, I contemplated practical matters. My apartment lease was month to month. Breaking it would be simple. My furniture was functional, but nothing I'd mourn leaving behind. I had few close connections in Boston beyond Caroline and Liam, a reality that struck me as both sad and liberating. When I arrived home, the stark contrast between the Four Seasons and my apartment was jarring. The living room furniture was worn, the kitchen appliances outdated, the bathroom perpetually, fighting mildew no matter how diligently I cleaned. I had accepted these conditions as necessary sacrifices for Caroline and Liam's benefit. Now, I wondered why I had normalized such diminished circumstances for myself. I was unpacking my overnight bag when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Caroline, her expression set in the tight smile she used when trying to contain anger. I opened the door, bracing myself. "Caroline? This is unexpected." She brushed past me into the apartment, surveying it with critical eyes. "You didn't answer my calls. I was planning to call you back after I settled in." She turned, arms crossed defensively. "We need to talk about this ridiculous job idea." "Would you like some tea?" I offered, choosing not to engage immediately with her characterization. "I don't want tea, Mom. I want you to explain why you're suddenly interested in abandoning your family for some fantasy job in New York." I measured my response carefully. It's not a fantasy. It's a genuine offer with substantial responsibilities and compensation. And I wouldn't be abandoning anyone. New York is a train ride away. "A train ride isn't the same as being here," Caroline insisted. "What about Liam? Have you thought about how this would affect him?" "Of course I have. But I've also recognized that my relationship with Liam is largely controlled by you and Jason. My physical proximity hasn't guaranteed meaningful time with him." Her face flushed. "That's not fair. We've been extremely generous, allowing you to be part of his life." There it was again, the fundamental misconception. Allowing me to be part of his life? "Caroline, I'm his grandmother. That relationship isn't a privilege you bestow or withhold based on my usefulness to your household." She paced the small living room, agitation evident in every movement. "Everything always comes back to this with you lately. We ask for one simple favor, and suddenly we're terrible people who don't appreciate you." It wasn't one simple favor, Caroline. It was the expectation that I would cancel meaningful plans to clean your house on New Year's Eve after being excluded from Liam's birthday celebration. "The club had limited spots," she said dismissively. "We've been through this." "Yes, we have. And that's part of a pattern I'm finally recognizing. My presence is welcome when it serves a practical purpose: childcare, housekeeping, financial contributions. It's deemed unnecessary for celebrations or moments of family significance." Caroline stopped pacing, her expression shifting from indignation to calculation. "Is that what this is about? You're punishing us because you felt left out of a birthday party?" "This isn't about punishment, it's about reassessment. Diana's offer has given me an opportunity to consider what I want for my remaining years." "Remaining years?" She rolled her eyes. "You're talking like you're on your deathbed. You're only 62. "Exactly. Which means I might have 20 or more productive years ahead of me. The question is how I want to spend them." Caroline sat heavily on the worn sofa, suddenly shifting tactics. "Mom, be realistic. Do you really think you can just start over at your age? Move to an expensive city you don't know? Work at some high-pressure job with people half your age? What happens if it doesn't work out?" The concerns weren't entirely unreasonable, which made them more effective as deterrents. I had asked myself these same questions during the quiet moments since Diana's offer. "There are risks involved," I acknowledged, "but staying in a situation that diminishes me carries its own costs." "Diminishes you? That's dramatic." Caroline picked at a loose thread on her designer jeans. "Look, I know things haven't been perfect. We get busy, life gets complicated, but we're family. That counts for something." "It counts for everything," I agreed, "which is why I hope a healthier dynamic between us might emerge from this change." She looked up sharply. "So you've already decided? Just like that? You're leaving?" "I haven't made a final decision, but I am seriously considering it." Caroline stood again, her calm facade cracking. "You realize how this looks, right? After all we've done for you, You're running off to play career woman because some old friend dangled a shiny opportunity. It's selfish, Mom. Plain and simple. The accusation that had once held such power over me now felt hollow. Is it selfish to want meaningful work, financial security, recognition for skills I've spent decades developing? Or is it only selfish when I want these things for myself instead of facilitating them for you? There you go again, twisting everything. We've included you in our lives, given you time with Liam, helped you when you lost your job. How? Exactly. Did you help me when I lost my job? I interrupted quietly. She faltered. Well, we offered you more time with Liam. You suggested I provide free childcare to reduce your expenses. That's not... Caroline stopped, then changed direction. Fine. If you want to see everything in the worst possible light, I can't stop you. But don't expect us to rearrange our lives when you realize this was a mistake and come crawling back. The threat was meant to terrify me, the specter of being cut off from the family I had sacrificed everything to nurture. But something unexpected had happened since the gala. I had glimpsed a version of myself that existed independently of Caroline's approval, a woman with intrinsic value beyond her, caretaking capabilities. I hope it doesn't come to that, I said calmly. I will always want a relationship with you and Liam, regardless of geography. But it needs to be a relationship built on mutual respect, not obligation and utility. Caroline's expression hardened. Mutual respect? Like abandoning us when Jason is up for a major promotion and we need family support? That kind of respect? My moving to pursue a career opportunity isn't abandonment, Caroline. You're a successful adult with resources and support systems. You don't need me in the ways you're suggesting. But Liam does. He asks about you all the time. The emotional leverage was so transparent, I almost sighed. Liam is important to me. That won't change. We can video call regularly. I can visit on weekends. We can establish new traditions. It's not the same, and you know it. Caroline moved toward the door, her message delivered, her manipulation attempted. Think about what you're throwing away, Mom. 27 years of being a family, all for some job that probably won't even last. After she left, I stood in my silent apartment, feeling the weight of her words trying to settle on my shoulders. In the past, they would have crushed me with guilt. Today, I examined them objectively, separating emotional manipulation from legitimate concerns. Yes, distance would change my relationship with Liam. Yes, starting over in a new city at 62 carried risks. Yes, the publishing industry was volatile and the position might not be permanent. But the alternative, remaining in a diminished role, financially vulnerable, emotionally manipulated, carried its own certainties. None of them promising. At least the path Diana offered contained possibilities for growth, dignity, and self-determination. I spent the afternoon researching New York neighborhoods, calculating budgets based on the offered salary, and investigating weekend train schedules between New York and Boston. Facts and figures replaced emotional turbulence with practical clarity. By evening, I had compiled enough information to see that the opportunity was not just emotionally appealing, but logistically viable. As I prepared a simple dinner, my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Grandma, it's Liam. Mom said I could text you from her old phone. Are you really moving away? My heart constricted. The message was likely composed. With Caroline's guidance, another manipulation tactic. But Liam's concern might be genuine nonetheless. I responded carefully. I'm considering a job opportunity, sweetheart. But I will always be your grandmother, no matter where I live. We can talk on video calls and I can visit often. I love you very much. The reply came quickly. But who will teach me about stars and space? This felt more authentically Liam. Our shared interest in astronomy had been a special connection. We can still learn about stars together. There are amazing planetariums. In New York, I could take you to visit. And the stars look the same from both places. Just like my love for you stays the same no matter where I am. There was a longer pause before the next message. Mom says you don't care about us anymore. That's not true, right? The naked manipulation infuriated me, using an 8-year-old as an emotional conduit. I took several deep breaths before responding. That's absolutely not true, Liam. I care about you more than anything. Sometimes, grown-ups need to make choices about work and where they live. But those choices don't change how much they love their family. Your mom is probably upset right now because change can be scary, but everything will be okay. Another pause, then. Can I still come visit you? Even in New York? Of course you can. I would love that very much. Cool, Mom's coming. Gotta go. Love you, Grandma. Love you too, my special stargazer. I set the phone down, a complex mixture of emotions washing through me. Caroline's willingness to use Liam as an emotional pawn was disturbing, but his genuine desire to maintain our connection was heartening. Perhaps distance would actually create clearer boundaries that might ultimately strengthen our relationship rather than diminish it. The next morning, I received a formal email from the Metropolitan's HR department, confirming the details of Diana's offer and requesting a response by January 15th. The email included links to resources for relocating employees, information about the company's mentorship program, and an invitation to join their private social network for staff. It felt surreal, professional courtesies extended to me after years of being undervalued. I spent the morning researching the authors and titles the Metropolitan had recently published, familiarizing myself with their aesthetic and market position. Their literary fiction list was impressive, featuring several award winners and critically acclaimed debuts. The prospect of helping shape such a catalog sent a thrill of creative excitement through me. Around noon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Eleanor? This is Jason Whitaker. Caroline's husband's voice was formal, but not openly hostile. Do you have a moment to talk? In 5 years of marriage to Caroline, Jason had never once called me directly. Our interactions had always been mediated through my daughter, limited to obligatory greetings at family gatherings. Of course, Jason. Is everything all right? Yes, fine. I understand you've received a job offer in New York. That's correct. He cleared his throat. Caroline is quite upset about this development. She feels it's sudden. I'm sorry she's upset. The opportunity arose unexpectedly, but it's one I need to consider seriously. Of course, of course. His tone was that of someone accustomed to negotiating business deals. The thing is, Eleanor, family, stability is important to us. Liam has benefited from having you nearby, and frankly, so has Caroline. You've been a support system we've come to rely on. The framing was revealing. I was a support system, not a person with my own needs and aspirations. I value my relationships with Caroline and Liam very much, I said carefully. That won't change regardless of geography. Perhaps, but proximity matters, especially with a young child. He paused. I understand the appeal of this offer, a chance to feel professionally relevant again at a time when many people are winding down their careers. That's natural. The condescension was subtle, but unmistakable. It's more than that, Jason. It's an opportunity to use skills I've developed over decades in a role with significant creative influence and financial security. Yes, well, about the financial aspects. His voice took on the tone he likely used when discussing investments with clients. Caroline mentioned the salary is quite attractive. But have you considered the cost of living in New York? The tax implications? Health insurance expenses as you age? These are complex considerations. I had, in fact, spent hours researching precisely these issues. I've done a thorough analysis. The compensation package includes comprehensive benefits and a housing allowance that addresses the cost difference. I see. He sounded mildly surprised that I had considered practical matters. Well, that's prudent, but there are other factors. Beyond finances. Starting over professionally at your age carries risks. New environments, new colleagues, new expectations. It can be stressful for anyone, but particularly. He trailed off diplomatically. Particularly for someone my age? I finished for him. Well, yes. Career transitions are challenging. I work with corporate executives making far less significant changes who struggle enormously. I appreciate the concern, Jason. These are all factors I'm weighing carefully. He shifted tactics again. Eleanor, let me be direct. Caroline depends on you emotionally more than she might admit. With my work schedule and travel requirements, having you nearby has been invaluable. Liam adores you. This change would create a significant void in our family structure. The appeal was more sincere than Caroline's emotional manipulations, which made it more effective. I did want to matter to my family. I did want to be valued. But I was beginning to understand that true value couldn't be contingent on geographical convenience or practical utility. I hear your concerns, Jason, and I want you to know that I'm not making this decision lightly or without considering its impact on everyone involved. But I also need to consider what's best for my future, professionally, financially, and personally. Of course, he said smoothly. Everyone deserves to pursue their interests. But perhaps there's a compromise that could satisfy both your professional ambitions and our family's needs. What kind of compromise are you suggesting? Well, Caroline mentioned your friend Diana is quite influential in publishing circles. Perhaps she could help you secure a similar position here in Boston, allowing you to advance professionally without the disruption of relocation. The suggestion revealed his fundamental misunderstanding of both the opportunity and my relationship with Diana. This wasn't a generic publishing job that could be replicated anywhere. It was a specific role at a specific company building something unique. And Diana wasn't a networking tool to be leveraged. She was a friend who had thoughtfully created an opportunity aligned with my specific talents. That's a kind suggestion. Jason, but the Metropolitan's new imprint is based in New York. The position involves working directly with their team there. I see. His tone cooled slightly. Well, I hope you'll give serious thought to what you might be sacrificing for this opportunity. Family connections are irreplaceable. After we hung up, I sat with the conversation, turning it over in my mind. Jason's approach had been more sophisticated than Caroline's emotional outbursts, but the underlying message was the same. My value was tied to my utility to their family unit, my ambitions secondary to their convenience. What struck me most was that neither of them had asked the most fundamental question. What do you want, Eleanor? What would make you happy? Their concern was entirely about the impact of my potential move on their lives, not on the significance of this opportunity for mine. It was a telling omission that clarified my decision more than any pro-con list could have. That evening, I composed an email to Diana. After careful consideration, I am formally accepting the position of executive editor for the Metropolitan's new literary imprint. I'm deeply honored by your confidence in me and excited to embark on this new chapter. Please let me know the next steps in the process. My finger hovered over the send button for several moments. Once sent, this email would set in motion changes that couldn't easily be reversed. My relationship with Caroline would be irrevocably altered. My comfortable, if limited, routines would be disrupted. The apartment that had been my home for decades would be packed up and left behind. But staying meant accepting that my life had reached its conclusion rather than its next evolution. It meant affirming that my purpose was subsidiary to Caroline's needs and conveniences. It meant teaching Liam, through example, that grandmothers, that women of a certain age, should set aside their ambitions and talents in service to others. I clicked send. Diana's response came within minutes. Wonderful news, Ellie. The team will be thrilled. I've instructed HR to send the formal contract immediately. Our relocation specialist will contact you tomorrow to begin arrangements. Welcome to the Metropolitan family. Or should I say, welcome back to yourself. Welcome back to yourself. The phrase lingered with me as I moved through my evening routine. I had spent so many years focused on what others needed from me that I had lost sight of who I was apart from those needs. Diana's offer wasn't just professional opportunity. It was an invitation to reclaim parts of myself that had been set aside, forgotten, but not lost entirely. As I prepared for bed, Caroline called again. I answered, steeling myself for another emotional confrontation. Jason told me he spoke with you, she began without preamble. He thinks you're really going to do this. I've accepted the position. Caroline. I start in February. Her sharp intake of breath was audible through the phone. So that's it? Decision made without even discussing it with your family? We have discussed it. You and Jason both shared your perspectives, which I considered carefully, but you're still choosing this job over your family. I'm not choosing a job over family. I'm choosing to pursue an opportunity that's meaningful to me while maintaining my family relationships in a different form. Different form, she repeated bitterly. You mean becoming one of those grandmothers who sends birthday checks from far away and makes obligatory holiday visits? That's not what I intend at all. I want to remain actively involved in your and Liam's lives. We can adapt and find new ways to connect. This is really happening, Caroline said, her voice shifting from anger to a sort of stunned realization. You're actually leaving. I'm relocating for work. I'm not disappearing from your life. There was a long pause before she spoke again, her voice quieter. You know, I always thought you'd be there, no matter what. That was the one constant I could count on. Even when you drove me crazy with your worrying and your outdated advice, you were there. Always. The vulnerability in her admission caught me off guard. After days of manipulation and anger, this glimpse of genuine feeling, of the daughter who had once depended on me absolutely, created a crack in my carefully constructed resolve. I'm still here for you, Caroline. That doesn't change because of geography. But it's not the same. Her voice caught slightly. What if Liam gets sick and I need help? What if something goes wrong with Jason's promotion? What if I just need my mom? It was the first time in years she had expressed needing me specifically, not just my practical assistance. I closed my eyes, emotion welling. Then you call me. We talk. If necessary, I get on a train. Being in New York doesn't mean I stop. Being your mother or Liam's grandmother. It just means I'm also being Eleanor, a woman with her own path to walk. I don't understand why you can't walk that path here, she said, but the fire had gone out of her opposition. Why does it have to be there? Because this specific opportunity exists there. Because Diana and the Metropolitan are there. Because sometimes growth requires stepping into unfamiliar territory. Another long silence stretched between us. When Caroline spoke again, her voice had a resignation that signaled, if not acceptance, at least recognition of the inevitable. Jason says we should look at the bright side. Liam will love visiting New York. All those museums and stuff. It wasn't enthusiasm, but it was a tentative step toward accommodation. There's an incredible children's museum I've been reading about, and the planetarium at the Natural History Museum is supposed to be spectacular. He'd like that, she admitted grudgingly. The astronomy thing is really sticking. Jason's father tried to interest him in sailing over the holidays, but Liam just kept asking when they'd be able to see different stars in the sky. For the first time since New Year's Eve, the conversation felt like two adults discussing a shared love, Liam, rather than combatants in a power struggle. The Southern Hemisphere has completely different constellations, I offered. Maybe someday we could take a trip together to see them. Maybe, Caroline said, not committing but not dismissing the idea either. So when does this all happen? I start in February. I'll need to find an apartment, pack up here. It's going to be a busy few weeks. Do you need help? With packing or whatever? The offer was stiff, but not insincere. That would be nice, actually. Thank you. As we said goodnight, neither of us mentioned love or family bonds or the complex emotions surrounding my decision. But something had shifted, however slightly. The conversation had moved from preventing my departure to acknowledging its reality, the first step toward whatever our relationship would become next. Later, lying in bed, I reflected on the day's developments. I had formally accepted a position that would transform my professional identity and financial circumstances. I had weathered emotional confrontations that would have previously left me shattered with guilt. I had begun practical preparations for a life change that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago. But perhaps most significantly, I had held firm to my decision despite the powerful gravitational pull of family expectations and established patterns. For the first time in decades, I had prioritized my own path without apology or excessive justification. As I drifted toward sleep, Diana's phrase echoed in my mind. Welcome back to yourself. It felt like greeting an old friend, both familiar and somehow new, both comforting and exhilarating. Eleanor Reynolds, not just Caroline's mother or Liam's grandmother, but a woman with talents, ambitions, and a future still unfolding. It was time to get reacquainted with her. The Metropolitan's relocation specialist, Vivian, turned out to be a godsend. She arrived at my apartment the following Monday, a stylish woman in her 50s with a tablet full of checklists and a no-nonsense approach that made the overwhelming task of relocating feel manageable. Don't worry about a thing, she assured, me surveying my modest belongings. I've moved executives twice your age with houses full of antiques. This will be straightforward. She walked through each room, making notes and occasionally taking photos. The company provides a relocation package that includes professional packing and moving services. Is there anything here you're particularly attached to, or would you prefer to start fresh in New York? I glanced around at my worn furniture, most of it chosen for practicality rather than beauty or meaning. Just a few personal items, photographs, books, my mother's china. The furniture could all be replaced. Vivian nodded approvingly. Perfect. The housing allowance can cover some basic furnishings for your new place. Speaking of which, what are your priorities for neighborhoods? The company keeps corporate apartments in Midtown, but many of our editors prefer the West Village or Brooklyn. The question caught me off guard. I had researched New York neighborhoods online, but the vastness of options was overwhelming. I'm not sure. Somewhere safe, obviously, ideally with good access to public transportation. Cultural amenities, particular cuisines, green spaces. I hesitated, unused to considering such preferences for myself. I enjoy bookstores and cafes, and perhaps somewhere with some quiet streets for walking. Budget range. The housing allowance is generous, but Manhattan has significant variation. I'd prefer to stay well within the allowance. I've always been careful with finances. Vivian made several notes. I'll compile some options. The corporate apartments are available as a temporary solution while you find something permanent. No rush on that front. As she worked through logistics, banking, healthcare, transportation, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. Each detail made the abstract idea of moving to New York more concrete, both thrilling and terrifying in its rapidly approaching reality. One last thing, Vivian said as she prepared to leave. The Metropolitan sponsors several employee affinity groups, women in publishing, industry veterans, cultural interest groups. I'll send information so you can connect with colleagues before you arrive." After she left, I sat at my dining table, surrounded by the materials she'd provided: neighborhood guides, moving timelines, benefits paperwork. The sheer professionalism of it all reinforced that this wasn't a fantasy or a whim. It was a legitimate career advancement, being treated with appropriate seriousness by a major company that valued my skills enough to invest in relocating me. My phone chimed with a text from Caroline. "Mom, Liam has a science project due next week about the solar system. He's insisting only you can help him. Any chance you're free this weekend?" The request was so normal, so routine, that for a moment, it felt like nothing had changed, but everything had, and Caroline's text reflected either denial of that reality or perhaps a tentative olive branch. I texted back, "I'd love to help. Saturday afternoon work for you?" Her response came quickly. "Perfect. Liam will be thrilled. He has some specific questions about Neptune that apparently Google can't answer." On Saturday, I arrived at Caroline and Jason's home with a bag of supplies for Liam's project: styrofoam balls, paint, wire, and a star chart I'd found in a craft store. The house looked exactly as it always had, but I felt like a different person entering it. A visitor now, rather than an extension of their household. Liam burst through the door before I could ring the bell. "Grandma, I thought Neptune was blue, but then I read it's actually blue-green and has storms, and I need to know why." His enthusiasm for astronomical minutiae was so earnest, so uncomplicated, by adult tensions that I found myself laughing with pure joy as I hugged him. "Well, hello to you too, my curious scientist. I brought supplies for your project." He peered into the bag. "Cool. Mom said we could work in the dining room. She covered the table with plastic already." Inside, Caroline greeted me with a stiff nod. "Thanks for coming. He's been talking about this project nonstop." "Happy to help." I set my supplies on the table, noting the careful preparation Caroline had made: plastic covering, paper towels, even snacks set aside. Small gestures that revealed she had taken this visit seriously. "Jason's at the club," she explained, though I hadn't asked. "Quarterly portfolio review with clients." "I see." I kept my tone neutral, unwilling to disrupt the fragile peace, with commentary on Jason's perpetual absences. "So, how are the moving plans going?" She asked this with careful casualness, arranging cookies on a plate. "Moving forward, the company has been extremely helpful with arrangements." She nodded tightly. "That's good, I guess." Liam, oblivious to the undercurrents, spread his research materials across the table. "Look, Grandma, I printed all these facts about Neptune. Did you know it has 14 moons? And one of them, Triton, orbits backward." For the next 2 hours, Liam and I constructed a detailed model of Neptune, complete with its major moons and distinctive blue-green coloration. I explained about methane in the atmosphere absorbing red light and reflecting blue, about the Great Dark Spot and its massive storms, about the mysteries still unsolved regarding its interior composition. Caroline drifted in and out of the room, occasionally joining our conversation but mostly observing from a distance. When Liam ran upstairs to find additional materials, she sat across from me at the table. "He's never this engaged with his other projects," she said quietly. "Even Jason can't get him this excited about anything, not even sports." "He has a natural curiosity about the universe," I replied. "That's something to nurture." "I know." She hesitated. "We've enrolled him in an astronomy camp for the summer. It was expensive, but Jason's father agreed it was a good investment in his education." The concession to Liam's interest, rather than Jason's family's preferences, represented a small but significant shift. "He'll love that." "The camp has a parent weekend in July. I thought—" She fidgeted with a paintbrush. "Maybe you'd want to join us. It's in Vermont. They have special telescopes set up for viewing. If you can get away from your new job, that is. The invitation, awkwardly extended but genuine, felt like a first tentative step toward our new reality. I'd like that very much. I'll request the time off as soon as my schedule is established. Liam thundered back downstairs with additional reference books. The moment of connection with Caroline passed, but something had changed. A small acknowledgement that our relationship could evolve rather than simply rupture. As I packed up to leave that evening, Liam's completed Neptune model proudly drying on the counter, Caroline walked me to the door. "The guest room will still be available whenever you visit," she said stiffly. "You don't have to stay in a hotel." "Thank you. That means a lot." She hesitated, then added, "Liam asked if he could visit you in New York over spring break. I told him we'd have to see how settled you are by then." "I'd love to have him visit. You and Jason would be welcome too, of course. Jason has that industry conference in April, but maybe Liam and I could come." She didn't meet my eyes. "If that works for you." It would work perfectly. As I drove home, I realized we were engaged in a delicate choreography, negotiating the boundaries of our changing relationship without explicitly discussing the emotional undercurrents. It wasn't ideal, but it was progress. Caroline was, in her own way, acknowledging my decision without accepting it entirely. It was as much as I could reasonably expect. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Vivian arranged viewings of 3 corporate apartments via video call, and I selected a 1-bedroom unit in a doorman building on the Upper West Side. Not the trendiest neighborhood, but one with tree-lined streets, abundant bookstores, and proximity to Central Park. Diana called frequently with updates about the imprint's development and introductions to key team members via video conferences. Each conversation reinforced that this wasn't charity or nepotism. I was being brought in for specific expertise and perspective that the younger staff lacked. "The acquisitions team is brilliant but inexperienced," Diana explained during one call. "They recognize quality writing but struggle with structural editing. That's where you'll be invaluable, Ellie. Your ability to see the architecture of a narrative, to strengthen without overriding an author's voice, that's rare." My confidence grew with each professional interaction. The skills I had developed over decades, often undervalued in my previous position, were being recognized and celebrated as essential. It was a profound reorientation of my professional identity. The movers came on a Tuesday in late January, efficiently packing my selected belongings and storing them for transport to New York. I had decided to donate most of my furniture to a women's shelter, keeping only a few cherished pieces: my reading chair, a small antique desk that had been my mother's, a quilt hand-stitched by my grandmother. Standing in my empty apartment on my final night in Boston, I experienced a complex swirl of emotions. This space had witnessed Caroline's college applications, her wedding planning, my early days with Liam. It had been a refuge during difficult times and a prison of sorts during others, a physical representation of the life I had constructed, around my daughter's needs rather than my own desires. Tomorrow I would turn in the keys and board a train to New York, leaving behind not just an apartment, but an identity I had occupied for decades. The prospect was both liberating and terrifying. My phone rang. Caroline. "Hi, Mom. Just checking if you're all set for tomorrow." "Yes, everything's packed. The movers have taken what's going to New York. The rest has been donated." "Do you need a ride to the station? Jason offered to drive you." The offer surprised me. "That's very kind of him. He says it's the least he can do. Plus, Liam is insisting on saying goodbye properly. He's made you something. In that case, I gratefully accept." "Great. We'll pick you up at 9. She paused. "It's weird thinking of you not being in that apartment anymore. You've been there my entire adult life." "It feels strange to me too," I admitted. "But also right somehow." "Mom?" Her voice softened. I'm still not happy about this move, but I'm trying to understand. I want you to know that. It was the closest thing to a blessing I was likely to receive. Thank you, Caroline. That means more than you know. The next morning, Jason's luxury SUV pulled up precisely at 9. Liam bounded out before the vehicle fully stopped, clutching a clumsily wrapped package. Grandma, we came to take you to your train, and I made you a present for your new apartment. I knelt to his level, accepting his enthusiastic hug. That's so thoughtful of you. Should I open it now or save it for New York? Now! Open it now! He bounced on his toes with anticipation. Inside the package was a hand-painted ceramic mug, decorated with wobbly planets and stars. I made it at my art class, Liam explained, proudly. It's a space mug for your coffee. Mom says you drink a lot of coffee. It's absolutely perfect, I told him, genuinely moved. I'll use it every morning and think of you. Caroline emerged from the passenger seat, her expression carefully neutral. Do you have everything? Final checks completed? All done. Just need to turn in the keys at the management office. Jason nodded, businesslike. I'll take your suitcase. Liam, help Grandma with her carry-on. The mundane logistics of departure, locking, up, dropping off keys, loading luggage, provided a welcome buffer against the emotional weight of the moment. By the time we reached the train station, I had achieved a fragile equilibrium that I hoped would last through the goodbyes. On the platform, Liam hugged me 3 separate times, extracting promises about video calls and visits. And you'll help me with my science fair project in March, right? Even if it's on the computer? Absolutely. We can work on it together over video calls. Jason shook my hand formally. The Metropolitan is fortunate to have you, Eleanor. Their gain is certainly our loss. Coming from him, the professional acknowledgement felt significant. Caroline hung back slightly, her arms crossed protectively over her chest. When my train was announced, she finally stepped forward. Call when you arrive so we know you're safe, she said, her voice tight with restrained emotion. I will. And if the apartment isn't what you expected, or if anything goes wrong, she trailed off. I'll be fine, Caroline. She nodded jerkily, then surprised me by pulling me into a fierce hug. You'd better be, she whispered. Because Liam needs his space mug replenished with ridiculous astronomy facts on a regular basis. I hugged her back, feeling the tremble she was trying to suppress. I love you, Caroline. That doesn't change with geography. I know. She pulled away, composing herself with visible effort. I love you too, Mom, even when you're being impossibly stubborn and independent. The train journey passed in a blur of anticipation and reflection. I watched familiar landscapes give way to new vistas, a physical manifestation of my life's transition. By the time we pulled into Penn Station, I felt a strange sense of rightness, as if I were arriving somewhere I had always been meant to be. Vivian met me at the station, efficiently guiding me through the chaos to a waiting car. Welcome to New York, Eleanor. Diana wanted to greet you personally but got pulled into an emergency meeting with the board. She'll meet you for dinner, at 7. The corporate apartment exceeded my expectations, spacious and elegantly furnished, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. My few boxes and suitcases had already been delivered, and a welcome basket sat on the dining table with a handwritten note from Diana. The view is even better with champagne. Your first editorial meeting is Monday. Until then, explore and enjoy. The city has been waiting for you. That evening, Diana took me to dinner at a small, exclusive restaurant in the West Village where the chef greeted her by name. Over exquisite food and wine, we discussed the imprint's upcoming projects and my role in shaping its direction. We have 3 manuscripts I'm particularly excited about, Diana explained, handing me a slim portfolio. First novels from diverse voices, each with tremendous potential but needing expert guidance to fully realize their vision. I thought you might want to review them this weekend, get a sense of what you'll be working with. I accepted the portfolio with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I'd love to start immediately. Not too immediately, Diana cautioned. With a smile. You have 3 days before official duties begin. Use at least some of that time to explore your new home. The work will still be there Monday. The weekend passed in a beautiful balance of professional preparation and personal discovery. I spent mornings reviewing the manuscripts Diana had provided, making careful notes on structural possibilities and thematic enhancements. Afternoons were devoted to exploration, walking through Central Park, visiting the Museum of Modern Art, finding small bookstores and cafes that might become regular haunts. On Sunday evening, Caroline and Liam video called to check in. Liam was full of questions about New York. Have you seen the Empire State Building yet? Is your apartment super high up? Have you ridden the subway? While Caroline observed with cautious interest. The place looks nice, she commented, peering at what she could see of the apartment through the camera. Better than I expected, actually. It's very comfortable, and the neighborhood is lovely. There's a park nearby, excellent restaurants, 3 bookstores within walking distance. Mom found a store that sells nothing but astronomy stuff, Liam announced excitedly. She's going to take me there when we visit. Caroline gave a small smile. He's got the whole visit planned already. I hope your schedule can accommodate a museum every day and 2 trips to the planetarium. I'll make it work, I promised, warmed by the casual assumption that there would indeed be a visit. So, tomorrow's the big day? Caroline's question was casual, but her expression watchful. Yes, my first official day. Orientation in the morning, editorial meeting in the afternoon. Nervous? There was no malice in her question, just genuine curiosity. A little, I admitted, but mostly excited. The manuscripts Diana gave me to review are extraordinary. Fresh voices with important perspectives. You'll be great, Caroline said, with unexpected sincerity. You always could. Spot talent in writing. Remember how you helped me with my college application essays? My writing professor said they were the strongest in the class. The memory, Caroline at 17, accepting my editorial suggestions with unusual grace, sent a wave of warmth through me. You were always a good writer when you applied yourself. Only because you taught me how to structure an argument properly. She glanced away, then back. Anyway, we should let you prepare for tomorrow. Liam, say goodnight to Grandma. Night. Grandma! Good luck at your new job. Send pictures of all the cool New York stuff. After they hung up, I sat with the pleasant afterglow of the conversation. Caroline's acknowledgement of my editorial skills, however casual, felt significant. A recognition of my professional identity separate from my maternal role. It was a small step toward a more balanced relationship. Monday morning arrived with a crystalline clarity to the winter air. I dressed with care in one of the new outfits I'd purchased for work. A charcoal pencil skirt, cream silk blouse, and tailored navy blazer that Diana had assured me struck the right balance between professional and creative for the Metropolitan's culture. The company's headquarters occupied several floors of a sleek midtown tower. In the lobby, a security guard checked my temporary ID and directed me to the executive elevator bank. 32nd floor for HR orientation, Ms. Reynolds. Welcome to the Metropolitan. The elevator opened directly into a reception area decorated with enlarged magazine covers spanning decades. A visual history of the publication's cultural influence. A young woman with purple-tipped hair greeted me warmly. Ms. Reynolds, we're so excited to have you joining us. I'm Zoe, Diana's assistant. She asked me to escort you to orientation and then bring you to the editorial meeting at 2. The morning passed in a whirlwind of paperwork, introductions, and system setups. Everyone I met was welcoming and professional, treating me with a respect that felt both foreign and deeply affirming after years of professional stagnation. The HR director, a brisk woman named Margot, handed me an elegant leather portfolio embossed with the Metropolitan's logo. Your official welcome package, security access, health insurance enrollment, retirement plan details, everything's in here. Diana mentioned you're staying in corporate housing initially? Yes, while I explore neighborhoods for something permanent. Excellent. We typically recommend new executives take at least a month before committing to a particular area. The city reveals itself slowly, especially to newcomers. By lunchtime, I had an official email address, security credentials, and a basic understanding of the company's organizational structure. Zoe reappeared precisely at noon. Hungry? The executive dining room is lovely, but I thought you might prefer something more authentic for your first day. There's a fantastic little Italian place around the corner that Diana loves. Over pasta. That lived up to its recommendation. Zoe briefed me on the afternoon's editorial meeting. It'll be the full team, 6 acquisition editors, 3 development editors, plus the marketing director. Don't worry about remembering everyone immediately. They're a friendly bunch mostly. Mostly? I questioned with a smile. Zoe grinned. Back. Marcus and marketing can be intense, especially around launch cycles. And Taylor, our newest acquisition editor, is brilliant but sometimes a bit territorial about her authors. Just standard publishing personalities. Nothing you haven't handled before, I'm sure. Her casual confidence in my abilities was refreshing. No condescension. No concern about my age or adjustment period. Just a straightforward assumption of competence. At 2 o'clock, Zoe escorted me to a spacious conference room where the editorial team was gathering. Diana stood at the head of the table, commanding the space with effortless authority. Everyone, your attention please, she called as we entered. I'm delighted to introduce Eleanor Reynolds, our new executive editor for the Horizon imprint. Eleanor brings decades of editorial expertise and a particular gift for narrative architecture that will be invaluable as we build this new venture. The introduction was met with genuine applause and curious glances. I recognized the weight of the moment. My first impression would set the tone for professional relationships that would define this new chapter. Thank you for such a warm welcome, I said, taking the seat Diana indicated at her right hand. I've spent the weekend reading some of the remarkable manuscripts you've acquired, and I'm incredibly excited about the voices we'll be bringing to readers through Horizon. I look forward to working with each of you to help these authors achieve their full potential. The meeting proceeded with presentations on current acquisitions, production timelines, and marketing strategies. I listened carefully, taking notes and occasionally offering observations when invited. The team was young but impressive, sharp, passionate about literature, and refreshingly diverse in background and perspective. When Diana asked for my thoughts on one of the manuscripts I'd reviewed over the weekend, I spoke confidently about its strengths and the structural adjustments that might elevate it further. The acquisition editor, Taylor, whom Zoe had mentioned, initially looked skeptical, but gradually nodded as I outlined specific suggestions. That's actually really insightful, she said when I finished. I've been struggling with the middle section, but I couldn't pinpoint why it was losing momentum. The parallel narrative structure you're suggesting could solve that elegantly. By the meeting's end, I had participated in substantive discussions about 5 manuscripts, suggested a promising comparative title for a marketing challenge, and volunteered to lead a structural edit on a particularly complex literary debut. I felt fully engaged professionally in a way I hadn't experienced in years, my opinions valued, my expertise acknowledged without question. As the team dispersed, Diana remained behind, a satisfied smile playing at her lips. Well, first impressions? They're exceptional, I said honestly. Sharp, committed, obviously talented. And of you? They were impressed, Ellie. Particularly Taylor, who isn't easily won over. It felt right, I admitted. Challenging but invigorating. I'd forgotten how much I loved deep editorial discussions. This is exactly why I wanted you here. You bring something they need. Experience. Certainly, but more than that. You bring perspective on narrative that can't be taught in publishing courses or picked up through industry trends. It's intuitive, developed through years of reading and editing thoughtfully. She gathered her materials, then paused. A group of editors usually goes for drinks on Monday evenings at a wine bar nearby. You're welcome to join, though I'd understand if you're overwhelmed after such a full first day. The old Eleanor might have declined, retreated to the safety of solitude to process the day's events, but I was no longer that woman. I'd love to join them, actually. The best way to understand the team is to observe them in a more relaxed setting, isn't it? Diana's smile widened. Exactly right. Zoe will show you the way. I have a publisher's dinner tonight, but I want a full report. Tomorrow. The wine bar was sophisticated but comfortable, with intimate booths and excellent lighting. The editorial team had claimed a large table in the back, conversation already flowing freely when Zoe and I arrived. There was a momentary, awkward pause as they registered my presence, the new boss joining their social gathering, but Taylor quickly shifted to make room. Eleanor, join us. We were just debating the merits of first-person present tense in literary fiction. Marcus thinks it's overdone, but I maintain it creates immediacy that's hard to achieve otherwise. The conversation flowed naturally from there. Literary debates, publishing gossip, gentle teasing about reading preferences and author interactions. They included me without condescension, occasionally asking for my perspective on industry, changes over time, or editorial approaches to particular challenges. By the evening's end, I had learned that Marcus had a secret passion for romance novels despite his public literary snobbery, that the youngest acquisition editor was writing her own novel during lunch breaks, and that the production manager collected vintage typewriters. Small personal details that transformed colleagues into individuals with stories of their own. When I finally returned to my apartment, exhausted but exhilarated, I sent a brief text to Caroline. First day complete. The team is brilliant and welcoming. The work is everything I hoped it would be. Her response came quickly. Glad it went well. Liam says to check your email. He sent pictures of his Neptune project displayed in the science classroom. It was a simple exchange, but meaningful in its normalcy. A mother sharing professional satisfaction, a daughter acknowledging it without resentment, a grandson maintaining connection across distance. As I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me appeared different somehow, shoulders straighter, eyes brighter, an unmistakable energy radiating from within. It wasn't just the new clothes or haircut, but something more fundamental, a reclamation of purpose and possibility. For the first time in decades, I was being valued for my mind rather than my utility, for what I could contribute intellectually, rather than what I could provide practically. The liberation of that shift was profound, altering not just how others perceived me, but how I understood myself. I thought of Liam and his passionate curiosity about the cosmos, of the wonder he found in discovering how vast and complex the universe truly was. Tonight, I felt something of that same wonder, not about distant planets, but about the unexplored territories of my own potential. Territories I had nearly forgotten existed until Diana's invitation reminded me of their vastness. My new beginning hadn't erased my past or severed my family connections. Instead, it had added dimension, transforming me from a supporting character in others' stories to the protagonist of my own continuing narrative. Tomorrow would bring new manuscripts to shape, new colleagues to understand, new challenges to navigate. And I would meet them not as Caroline's mother or Liam's grandmother, though I remained proudly both, but as Eleanor Reynolds, executive editor, a woman reclaiming her place in the professional world she had once thought lost to her forever. The realization settled over me with the comfortable weight of truth. This wasn't a fantasy or temporary escape. This was my life now, expanded, enriched, and finally, genuinely mine. 6 months into my position at the Metropolitan, spring had fully blossomed into summer in New York. I had settled into a rhythm that felt both invigorating and sustainable. Challenging workdays balanced with peaceful evenings, professional accomplishments complemented by personal discoveries. After 2 months in the corporate apartment, I had found a charming one-bedroom in a pre-war building on West 83rd Street. The apartment featured bay windows overlooking tree-lined streets, built-in bookshelves that I was steadily filling, and a small but functional kitchen where I was relearning the pleasure of cooking for myself. It wasn't large, but it was undeniably mine, a space that reflected my tastes and priorities rather than the practical compromises of my previous life. My professional integration had progressed more smoothly than I could have anticipated. The initial curiosity about Diana's friend had given way to genuine respect as my editorial contributions proved their value. 3 manuscripts I had shepherded through substantial revisions were now moving into production, each author having thanked me for insights that had elevated their work. Taylor, initially the most skeptical of the acquisition editors, had become something of a mentee, often appearing at my office door with manuscript questions that evolved into wider discussions of narrative craft. Even Marcus from marketing had come around, especially after I'd helped reframe the positioning for a literary debut he'd been struggling to categorize. "You have this knack," he'd told me, "for seeing the universal appeal in highly specific stories. It's making my job significantly easier." Diana, true to her nature, took minimal credit for my success, though she occasionally allowed herself a satisfied smile during meetings where my contributions were particularly well received. "I told you they needed your perspective," she said during one of our weekly dinners. "Publishing has become too formulaic, too algorithm-driven. You bring the human element back to the equation." Professionally, I had found my footing in this new world with surprising ease. The greater challenge had been maintaining and redefining my relationship with Caroline and Liam across the geographical distance. Video calls had become our primary connection, scheduled Sunday evening check-ins supplemented by spontaneous calls when Liam had astronomy questions or Caroline needed advice. The structure actually improved certain aspects of our communication. With the calls calendar blocked and prioritized, Caroline was less distracted, more present for our conversations than she had often been during in-person visits. Liam had adapted to the change with the resilience of childhood, treating our video calls as special events for which he prepared questions and observations. "Grandma, I saw Jupiter through my telescope last night. It had 3 visible moons." "That's wonderful, stargazer. Did you identify which moons they were?" His enthusiasm remained unchanged by distance, perhaps even enhanced by the focused attention our calls provided. He had taken to sending me daily space facts via Caroline's phone, a ritual that anchored our connection between more substantial conversations. Caroline's adjustment had been more complex. The initial anger and resentment had gradually softened into a wary acceptance, punctuated by occasional relapses into passive-aggressive comments or attempts at manipulation. But there were also promising moments of growth, small acknowledgments of my new life, tentative inquiries about my work that seemed genuinely interested rather than merely polite. "Mom, you mentioned an author you're working with who writes about mother-daughter relationships," she said during one call in late April. "Is her book published yet? I thought it might be interesting to read." These small shifts accumulated, gradually, like sediment forming new land after a geological upheaval. We were creating a different relationship, not without tension or old patterns, but with the possibility of greater balance and mutual respect. In early July, Liam and Caroline made their promised visit. I had prepared meticulously, researching child-friendly museums and restaurants, stocking my small kitchen with Liam's favorite snacks, creating a detailed itinerary that balanced structured activities with downtime. When they arrived at my apartment, Liam raced through each room, marveling at the city views and built-in bookshelves. Grandma, you can see the whole world from here, and you have more books than the library. Caroline entered more cautiously, her gaze taking in every detail. I watched her closely, aware that she was forming impressions not just of my living space, but of the life it represented. It's lovely, she finally said, genuine surprise in her voice. Much more. You than I expected. Thank you. It feels like home. She nodded, trailing her fingers along a bookshelf. These are organized just like they were in the apartment in Boston, by subject, then author. The observation that I had maintained certain patterns from my previous life seemed to comfort her somehow. Perhaps it suggested that while circumstances had changed dramatically, I remained fundamentally the person she had always known. The visit unfolded better than I had dared hope. Liam was enchanted by the Natural History Museum's planetarium show, declaring it the best space thing ever. Caroline gradually relaxed, appearing to enjoy the city's energy and cultural offerings more than she had anticipated. We established easy rhythms, morning coffee while Liam watched cartoons, adventures during the day, quiet evenings with board games or movies. On their final evening, after Liam had fallen asleep in the guest room surrounded by museum souvenirs and new books, Caroline and I sat in my small living room with glasses of wine. You seem different here, she observed, her tone neutral but curious. Different how? She considered this, head tilted slightly. More present somehow. More yourself. I'm not explaining it well. I think I understand what you mean. I feel more fully engaged with my life now, professionally and personally. She nodded slowly. I was prepared to find you struggling, or lonely or overwhelmed. That would have made this easier in a way. I could have felt validated in my concerns. A small, rueful smile crossed her face. Instead, you're thriving. It's disorienting. I'm sorry it's disorienting, I offered carefully. But not sorry that I'm thriving. No, you shouldn't be. She took a sip of wine. Mom, I've been thinking a lot about our history, the patterns we've established. I wasn't. I haven't always been fair to you. The admission, however tentative, caught me by surprise. We all have our blind spots in family relationships. Mine has been seeing you primarily as my mother, my support system, and not as a person with your own needs and aspirations. She gestured around the apartment. Being here makes it impossible to maintain that perspective. This is clearly a life you've built for yourself, not just an escape from obligations. The insight was more profound than I had expected, especially from Caroline, who had historically struggled with perspective outside her immediate needs and perceptions. Thank you for seeing that, I said simply. I'm trying. She met my eyes directly. I won't pretend it's been easy adjusting to this change. There are still days I feel angry or abandoned. But watching you this week, how engaged you are with your work, how you've created this space that so clearly reflects you, I'm beginning to understand that this isn't about rejection, it's about self-respect. The observation was so accurate it momentarily took my breath away. Yes, that's exactly what it is. I want that for myself someday, she admitted quietly. The clarity you seem to have about your own value. It was perhaps the most honest conversation we had ever had as adults, Caroline acknowledging my autonomy while revealing her own vulnerability. Neither of us pushed further that night, both recognizing the fragility of this new terrain. But something had shifted, a foundation laid for a different kind of relationship moving forward. After they departed the next morning, Liam extracting promises about my attendance at his school science fair in October, Caroline hugging me with unexpected warmth, I returned to my apartment with a complex mixture of emotions, The visit had been successful beyond my expectations. Yet their absence left a tangible emptiness in spaces that had briefly contained their energy and voices. This, I realized, was the natural consequence of my choice. Periods of separation balanced against more meaningful connection when together. It wasn't perfect, but it was sustainable, allowing me to maintain family bonds while honoring my own path. The following Monday, I returned to the office energized rather than depleted. Another contrast with my previous life, where family obligations had often left me exhausted for work rather than rejuvenated by genuine connection. Diana noticed immediately. "Good visit?" she asked, pausing in my office doorway. "Surprisingly so. Caroline seems to be adjusting to the new reality. We had some honest conversations." "Excellent. Healthy boundaries create space for authentic relationships to develop." She glanced at her watch. "Editorial meeting in 10. We're discussing fall acquisition targets." The meeting was particularly engaging. A debate about emerging literary trends and underrepresented voices we might cultivate. I advocated strongly for a manuscript Taylor had discovered from an older debut novelist, a woman in her 60s who had written a powerful exploration of reinvention after loss. "Her perspective offers something our list currently lacks," I argued. "There's wisdom in the narrative that resonates without being didactic, and the market assumptions about debut authors being exclusively young are ready to be challenged." My passionate defense swayed the more hesitant voices. As the meeting concluded, Diana gave me a meaningful nod, acknowledgement that my perspective had influenced a significant acquisition decision. Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Jason. We had maintained minimal direct contact since my move, our communications filtered almost exclusively through Caroline. "Eleanor, hope I'm not interrupting. I wanted to discuss something Caroline may have mentioned during her visit." "She didn't mention anything specific from you," I replied, curious about this unusual direct outreach. Well, I've been considering some investment opportunities in publishing, digital innovations specifically. Given your insider perspective now, I thought you might be willing to provide some industry insights over dinner when you're next in Boston." The request revealed how profoundly perceptions had shifted. 6 months ago, I had been the mother-in-law whose professional opinion was irrelevant. Now I was a potential business resource with valuable industry knowledge. "I'd be happy to share general observations, Jason, though of course I'm limited in what I can discuss about specific metropolitan strategies." "Understood. Purely general industry trends, disruption potentials, adaptation patterns, that sort of thing." He paused. "Caroline mentioned you might be visiting for Liam's science fair in October?" "Yes, I've promised to attend." "Excellent. We'll arrange dinner that weekend. Caroline says you're doing well there. The job, the apartment, everything." The comment, casually delivered but undoubtedly intentional, represented another small acknowledgement of my successful transition. "Yes, things have worked out very well." "Good, that's good." His tone remained professionally detached, but the conversation itself, him reaching out directly, acknowledging my expertise, represented meaningful evolution in our family dynamics. As summer progressed into early fall, my professional contributions at the Metropolitan continued to expand. Diana appointed me to the acquisition committee for the main publishing division, not just our specialized imprint, recognizing that my editorial perspective had value across multiple genres and formats. "You have a gift for identifying the heart of a narrative," she explained, "regardless of its category or target demographic. We need that perspective at the higher decision-making level." The promotion came with increased responsibilities, but also greater creative influence and a substantial salary adjustment. I found myself in the unprecedented position of having not just financial security, but actual prosperity, able to invest thoughtfully in my future while enjoying modest luxuries in my present. I joined a book club in my neighborhood, enrolled in a photography class at a community center, and became a regular at local cultural events. Gradual friendships developed, with colleagues, neighbors, fellow book lovers, creating a social fabric entirely separate from my family identity. In September, I received an email from Caroline with an attachment labeled, "Thought you might find this interesting." It contained a job listing for a curriculum development position at Liam's school, focused on creating science-based literature programs for elementary students. The gesture was meaningful on multiple levels: recognition of my professional expertise, awareness of my love for Liam, and most significantly, absence of pressure or manipulation. She hadn't called insisting I apply or suggesting it would solve our geographical separation. She had simply shared information that intersected my interests, leaving any response entirely to my discretion. I replied with genuine appreciation for her thoughtfulness, explaining that while the position sounded fascinating, I was deeply committed to my current role and the literary voices I was helping to develop. Her response was equally mature. "Understood. Just thought you should. No options exist if circumstances ever change." The exchange, though brief, exemplified our evolving relationship: mutual respect for autonomous choices rather than emotional leverage or obligation. We were learning to connect as adults with separate lives rather than through the hierarchical, parent-child dynamics that had defined our previous interactions. October brought Liam's science fair, an event I attended with genuine enthusiasm rather than obligatory participation. His project, a detailed model of how light pollution affects astronomical observation, won first prize in his grade, an achievement he attributed partly to concepts we had discussed during our regular video calls. Grandma taught me about how city lights create a dome effect that blocks out stars, he explained proudly to the judges, his small chest puffed with importance. The weekend visit included the promised dinner with Jason to discuss publishing industry trends, a surprisingly engaging conversation that revealed genuine intellectual curiosity beneath his usually pragmatic exterior. Caroline joined us, contributing thoughtfully to the discussion and demonstrating greater interest in my professional world than she had ever shown previously. As I prepared to return to New York on Sunday evening, Caroline helped me pack while Liam prepared a travel science kit consisting of constellation flashcards and a small meteorite replica for me to remember him by. "Mom," Caroline said quietly, folding a sweater I had discarded, "I've been thinking about taking a creative writing class. The community college offers an evening workshop that works with my schedule." "That sounds wonderful. You've always had a good sense for language." She smoothed the sweater unnecessarily. "I found some of my old college essays recently, the ones you helped me revise. Your comments were so insightful. I never really acknowledged that at the time." "You were 18. Acknowledging parental wisdom isn't exactly a hallmark of that. She smiled wryly. "Still, I could have been more appreciative. Anyway, I thought, maybe you could read something I write for the class. If you have time, of course. I understand how busy you are." The request, tentative, respectful of my time constraints, represented another step in our recalibrated relationship. "I'd be honored to read your work, Caroline. Truly." On the train back to New York that evening, watching the autumn landscape blur past the window, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The woman who had stood in Caroline's driveway last New Year's Eve, devastated by exclusion from her grandson's birthday celebration, would hardly recognize the life I now inhabited: professionally fulfilling, financially secure, rich with purpose and possibility. Yet that transformation hadn't required severing family bonds, only redefining them on healthier terms. Caroline and Liam remained central to my heart, our connections now based on mutual respect and genuine interest rather than obligation and utility. The geographical distance had, paradoxically, created space for emotional proximity of a more authentic nature. As the train approached New York, my phone chimed with a text from Diana. "Manuscript crisis. Promising debut needs emergency structural intervention. Breakfast meeting tomorrow 8 a.m.? I need your narrative architecture magic." The request, professional, respectful of my expertise, acknowledging my specific gifts, made me smile. This was the life I had chosen, with its challenges and rewards, its periods of solitude balanced by meaningful connection. It wasn't perfect, but it was authentically mine, a life reclaimed rather than merely received. When I arrived at my apartment, I unpacked Liam's travel science kit, placing the meteorite replica on my desk where I could see it while working. Then I made a cup of tea in the mug he had painted for me, its wobbly planets and stars now a cherished symbol of continuity. Amid change, tomorrow would bring new manuscripts to shape, new authors to guide, new challenges to navigate. And I would meet them not as a supporting character in someone else's story, but as the protagonist of my own continuing narrative. A narrative I was finally writing with intention and purpose, guided by hard-won wisdom and open to perpetual revision. The woman who had sacrificed everything for others had finally learned that the greatest gift she could offer the world was her fullest, most authentic self. That revelation had come later than I might have wished, but not too late to transform the chapters still unwritten. A truth worth remembering by anyone who believes their own story has already reached its conclusion. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.